The topic is emotive, but the good thing is that Metropole Debrief is a dialogue and everyone has a say. We want to sample your say now because our mics are off and your voice is on. Is it 19th of October or in January? Magoha says all that is speculation as we await his directive on the reopening of schools. However, our panelist says we are not ready whatsoever to reopen our schools. What do you say? Time now for Social Watch with Vincent Odhiambo. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Ondiro. Now, like you've mentioned, we are not ready, but this is a conversation that has elicited a lot of reactions online from Kenyans.
Okay.
Now, let's start from Twitter, where at David Makali, he says, the renewed urgency and vigor to reopen schools in October is a premature, risky gamble. Education is not an end in itself, and the hurry is unjustifiable. Whose deadline are we working to beat?
I could be wrong.
I could be wrong. Is he wrong?
I don't know. I mean, very valid point he's raising here. But if you listen to our panelists earlier on, they've said we are not ready. And whatever the government is trying to do is they're trying to save the academic calendar. They're trying to save exams. We always have national exams towards the end of the year. Yeah. That's what they're trying to salvage. But when you think about it from a rational point of view, we have that academic calendar to save whatsoever. But again, there's the risk of COVID-19 and the health of our children. So we need to put all these factors on a weighing scale and decide which one outweighs which.
Okay. But if you see the reaction from the online users, particularly in Kenya, they're like, you know, probably there is a hidden agenda behind the push to reopen schools. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I wouldn't know because as Magoha says, we shouldn't speculate. Mm-hmm. However, whatever the agenda is, we have to put the welfare of the learner first. If the agenda puts the welfare of the learner first and it ensures that our children are safe, then we run with it. But if the safety of the children is not guaranteed, then there's a problem.
So safety first.
Safety first.
Okay. Now, at Amadi Onacha, schools should reopen in January in case the government thinks Corona has stabilized. It should first fully open the economy, parents to make some cash for school fees because education from grade 1 in Kenya is not as free as the government thinks.
This is a point that has been raised by many people. Even on last week's show, we were discussing the socioeconomic impact of COVID-19 on households. Yes. 65% of Kenyans have taken pay cuts, and it says in January to mean Kenyans are not at a really good place financially. So reopening of schools has to be a very strategic and tactical move unless you open schools and parents do not have money to pay for their students for school fees. Remember, schools communicated that only first term was covered. So when you go back to school, you're expected to pay school fees for second term and third term, or you're expected to pay for the whole academic year. Yeah. So these are things that we really need to think about.
Okay, I think the government should open places like bars and make sure that resumption of 24-hour economy comes back to life.
Well, interesting that you mentioned bars because Amunga also mentioned bars, but outside of bars, I think the key is reopen the economy. Let's see if there'll be a stabilization there. If another shilling will trickle down into the pockets of Kenyans, then they can be able to afford their education.
Okay. P. Mutwiri, many livelihoods have suffered because of the closure of schools. How many people directly or indirectly depend on schools for survival? As we open the economy, this is one area that needs to be reopened. If not for anything else, but for the purpose of the economy.
Exactly. I mean, many private schools have gone down under from the COVID-19 pandemic. If kids are not going to school, then they do not have money. Some of these people have rented out the places that they're using our schools, as Amunga and Daria both mentioned. And some of these schools have had no means of keeping themselves afloat. It means teachers do not have a salary. It means families are suffering. So I really understand this point because many people are directly and indirectly affected by schools. And even last week on Social Watch, you interviewed a guy whose wife was a teacher, and the sole breadwinner of the family because the guy rides a boda. Now that source of livelihood has been taken away, and you can only imagine how difficult it is for that family.
Yeah. Now, from your, like you've mentioned, a lot of families have been affected. Now, if you look at the teachers as well, they depend on schools getting to be reopened. We have cooks who work in schools, we have gatemen, we have cleaners. So if the schools reopen, I think probably these people will be able to like cater for the lives of their family members.
Good catch, good catch.
Yeah.
Another tweet?
At Ali Alieko says, children and young adults have minimal risks. Schools should reopen. In-person schooling is critical for children for their intellectual development. Think about the negative consequences of schools closure for parents who cannot access online resources. We have the government having to install e-learning in schools within the country. But so far, it's something that probably we'd say it's a plot project because it has not reached its level of ensuring that education goes on smoothly in terms of e-learning. What's your take on that?
I think this is the place that things like social mobility and Gini coefficiency come to play. Yes. And if the haves and the have-nots, the line has been drawn very clearly. If you have money, your child will continue learning. If you do not have money and you're poor, your child goes to a school that does not have probably this kind of infrastructure. So no learning takes place for them. And this just goes on to further widen the Gini coefficiency gap in the country and reduce social mobility.
In terms of that, the ministry has not outlined what to do with people who have missed out. So where do they go to?
Good question. And also, where do we pick up the syllabus when we reopen schools? There are those who've been learning and they've covered the syllabus. How about those who've just been playing at home?
Yes, this is one of the things that the ministry should actually take care of. Yes. Another tweet.
Okay.
At Rapture Kenya, governments like in Kenya have asked parents who are unable to pay private fees, school fees rather, to transfer their children to free public schools when they reopen in October, as another way of surviving these hard economic times. Okay, we have no money, right? And private schools, obviously in Kenya, they pay high dollar, and now they're told take your kids to public schools. Then we have the issue of numbers. If you transfer them to public schools, it means public schools will be flooded.
Yeah.
Then there is the aspect of social distancing. So how does the government make sure that there is safe transfer, obviously, then there is social distancing as well?
Well, from the guidelines, they've said most of the learning will take place outside. Okay. And further to that, Magoha is buying desks. So we'll just have to wait and see what their logic is. Okay. But I also want you to know that private education is not necessarily top dollar. There are private schools that are way cheaper than public schools, but kids prefer to go there. These are some of the schools that have closed down. Yeah. You know, so there's that influx of numbers there at the side. And as you've said, as if public schools are always overwhelmed, even private schools, as Daria said, it's about to be chaotic if we don't find good means to solve this problem.
So is that the point where the phased reopening comes in?
I don't know, because if you look at international schools, like the other day I was passing around Yaya, you can see that even at 12, kids are going to school.
Yes.
They already have that kind of format working for them. In Kenya, it only works in universities where you have a class today, tomorrow you might not have a class and stuff like that. Yeah. When I was in 4th year, I only had classes Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So Thursday and Friday were free days to go to the library and do your extra studying. But it doesn't work like that in primary and high school. Yes. So a phased reopening, how will it work? Does it mean one bunch goes to school today, the other goes tomorrow morning, afternoon? We have to sit down and rethink all of these things. But I don't know, this is what people are saying here. What are people saying on the ground? Okay,
on the ground, parents are not yet ready. Teachers are not ready because the infrastructure there is still a mess. Yeah, let's watch. As preparations for the reopening of learning institutions is underway, there has been a conflicting reaction from industry stakeholders, with others siding with the planned reopening in October this year, while others opting for the initial January 2021.
If I would be asked, they would have waited when they had said of reopening in January, so that at least with that one the parents are, teachers, parents, and also learners are prepared psychologically. I can't say we have prepared, because it's like an ambush. It is something that has just come, because even as we are talking, we are not sure when is the date to reopen the schools. The children have been away for a long period of time. Yeah, a long period. And we are being told like when they open, we are going to enter into the second term, like assuming we did first term successfully. And looking at the way the pandemic, came, it's like it got many people unaware. Water is an issue. We will need, of course, more input to ensure that the water is within the school compound.
The stigmatization of the students with allergies, the allergic students. Some dust and they sneeze, and students are students, learners are learners. They will be stigmatized. To manage high school and primary students, it's not easy. It's not something just you can just say, let's go and do this. Yes, they will have to interact, they will have to do everything as they always do.
Learning has to continue. Despite the virus still being around, we have to adapt. We've even seen in the recent past, the political gatherings, church gatherings, and other social gatherings, they've been taking place under the watch of the ministry. As a teacher, I'm not worried on my safety because we've been given directives. Reopening may come with its challenges. Most of our public schools are overpopulated. I teach in a school with an average of 45 to 60 students per stream. That may be a challenge, especially on the aspect of social distancing.
However, the education sector has morphed and has seen schools develop measures to mitigate the challenges brought by the effects of COVID-19, with schools taking advantage of technology.
When COVID came, we saw the opportunity and we went in there. So for us, COVID-19 was a disruption for almost maybe a week or two. And then immediately after that, we picked it up. We had already started on online learning from about 15 years, we've been doing online learning, but we desired, having understood it more and seen the benefits, we desired to have more of our students participate and enjoy the possibilities on online learning. We suddenly found ourselves needing to do so much more, setting up the systems and bringing on board people, building the capacity of people and assurance that they can actually use the platforms we have. We have a wonderful platform. So getting them to be confident about the trainings we've needed to do. So it's really been a very busy time, but busy in looking for ways to win in spite of the challenges that we have faced. Facing out the opening will be a very good thing because as we face it out, so some of the initial stages gives us opportunity to evaluate how well we are doing. We really welcome that possibility. We are very excited about it because it offers new opportunities to higher education alongside what already has gotten established during COVID-19. So social distancing will still have to be thought out. How do we do it that we're successful? But the thing we cannot stop, we must not fail to do is we must not fail to open the institutions. We must open them. Some of the programs that really need a face-to-face interaction with the lecturer or the equipment, mainly the equipment, not even the lecturer, the equipment, like for example, ICT and things like that. So we will be determining, some of the things that Senate is doing is determining which of those two programs. And even when that happens, then how do we do it so that we manage to ensure that there's safety for the lecturers, for the students, and that also we take advantage of the possibilities we've seen in online learning.
Parents, learners, and teachers will now have to wait for communication from both the Ministry of Education and Ministry of Health on when it's safe enough to resume learning. For Metropole Debrief, I'm Vincent Odhiambo.
Well, those were your views on Street Talk. Now we have time for one more thing, and that is Debrief Take Home. And tonight we have to dish each other with the bitter truth. And the bitter truth is we are rushing to reopen schools because we think that we have lost an academic calendar and we need to salvage the time that we have left. Let's do a compare and contrast analysis. The UK reopened its schools, and on the first day of reopening, only about 42% of the kids showed up to go back to school. South Africa reopened their schools, and in the first week of reopening, there was a surge of infections in the schools. In this country, when you get tested for COVID-19, it takes about 5 days to 10 days to get your results back. Imagine how catastrophic it would be to have a COVID-19 case in one school. Imagine how catastrophic it would be to have a COVID-19 case in a school where in the sick bay you have a matron instead of a qualified nurse. Imagine how catastrophic it would be if we reopen and have to close schools all over again because there has been a COVID-19 case. What kind of mental trauma will this leave on our kids? Let that alone. Do we have the infrastructural capacity? Our classrooms hold at least 50 students per class. If we are to social distance, they are to hold about 25 kids per class. Where do the rest of the 25 go to? As is, most of these schools are overwhelmed because of 100% transition. Most of these boarding schools are even using their dining facilities as dormitories. Where do they go? To a more pressing issue, teacher-student ratio. When you divide the class into two, where do you get the extra teacher to be teaching the students? Does a phased reopening work in the format of this country? Rural settings, sometimes kids have to walk very many kilometers to get to school. Do you think you can do the morning shift and the afternoon shift? Do you have the manpower? Okay, we are saying e-learning, remote learning. Do we have the infrastructure rolled out? The tablets are wherever they are, who knows where? How about internet connectivity? How about electricity costs? How about digital literacy? Let's not kid ourselves. Magoha is operating from utopia on an ivory tower, thinking that the way it works in the University of Nairobi or the way it worked during his tenure is how it works in Turkana or Marsabit or the deepest parts of Mombasa, Lamu, Kisumu. He thinks that's how it works. But unfortunately, that is not how it works. The pandemic has turned the education sector into two, the haves and the have-nots. Kabarak High School are ready for exams. How about that school in your village? Is it ready for exams? If you can answer that question, if you think that you feel safe to take your child back to school, then you can. But if you have hesitation in answering any of these questions, then it's time you raise your voice and help in finding a proper solution to ensure that we do not jeopardize the education of our children, but equally, we do not put their health at risk. But again, who am I and what do I know? According to Magoha, we are just journalists that speculate. So you tell us what you think. Always talk to us at Metropole TV KE on Twitter, at Ondiro Ganga. The hashtag to use is Metropole Debrief, or you can send us an email, metropoletv@metropole.co.ke. Until next time, enjoy the rest of your viewing.